Imagine building a golden empire for over a century, stone by stone, trophy by trophy, only to watch it turn into a pile of ash in a single, agonizing afternoon. You think your club is protected by the weight of its history? History is not a fortress. It is a graveyard littered with the corpses of giants who believed they were too big to burn, only to find themselves suffocating in the cold, dark basement of professional football. In this game, status is a beautiful lie, and the higher you climb, the more gravity hungers for your fall. Welcome to Sportx Radar, the only place where we track the signals the rest of the world is too distracted to see. We don't just read the headlines. We scan the structural cracks, the boardroom whispers, and the tactical rot that brings empires to their knees. We are the early warning system in a sport that forgets its legends far too quickly. Before we descend into the wreckage of these fallen titans, make sure your frequency is tuned to ours. Lock in, hit that subscribe button, and activate your own radar. Because in a world of disappearing giants, being informed is your only defense. The tragedy of a falling giant almost always begins with a silent, creeping arrogance. It is the belief that it could never happen to us. But the 1970s proved that even the most sacred names aren't safe. When Manchester United, the pride of England, slipped into the second tier in 1974, the football world stood still in disbelief. Just a few years later, Tottenham felt the same cold floor vanish beneath them. These weren't just bad seasons. They were seismic shifts that proved the crown offers zero protection when the heart of the club stops beating. The 80s brought an even darker twist in Italy, where AC Milan, the reigning kings, were dragged into the underworld not because of their feat, but because of their greed. The Totonero scandal proved that a giant can be toppled by a single crooked handshake, turning a champion into an outcast overnight. As we moved into the 90s, the falls became more cinematic and more devastating. Look at Marseille, the undisputed kings of France and the masters of Europe. They stood on the highest mountain, clutching the Champions League trophy, only to be shoved into the abyss by the very man who built them. Bernard Tapie's ambition was a wildfire that eventually consumed everything it touched. One match-fixing scandal was all it took for the French authorities to strip them of their title and cast them into the shadows. It was a masterclass in how a club can reach for the sun and get its wings melted in an instant. This era proved that no matter how much you win, the ghost of your mistakes will always run faster than your strikers. Then came the era of financial suicide, where the giants didn't just fall, they detonated. Leeds United remains the ultimate cautionary tale of the modern age. They didn't just spend money, they gambled their very existence on a dream they couldn't afford to keep. They reached a Champions League semi-final, flying high on a cloud of debt, but when the music stopped, there were no chairs left. Within 2 years, a European powerhouse was a hollow shell, sold off piece by piece until they landed in the third tier. Similarly, in Scotland, Glasgow Rangers provided a shock that still echoes today. A titan of tradition, a club that defined a nation's footballing identity, vanished into liquidation because of tax papers and mismanagement. They didn't just get relegated. They ceased to exist and had to be reborn from the literal dirt of the 4th division. These aren't just sporting failures, they are corporate executions. In the Southern Hemisphere, the drama reached a fever pitch with River Plate. Imagine one of the most iconic clubs on the planet, a cathedral of footballing talent, being betrayed by a convoluted points system and their own declining standards. When the final whistle blew and their first ever relegation was confirmed, the city didn't just mourn, it burned. The fans' passion turned into a riotous fire, proving that for some, football isn't a game. It's a lifeblood, and when you cut it off, the reaction is violent. Yet River Plate's story also showed a glimmer of hope. The fall was a purgatory that allowed them to be reborn, eventually returning to conquer the continent. But not every giant is granted a resurrection. The modern era has brought us the disposable giants, clubs that have everything but a soul. Look at Schalke 04 in Germany, a fortress of mining tradition with millions of loyal followers and a consistent presence in the Champions League. Yet, they allowed themselves to become a revolving door for talent, selling their future to satisfy the present. When they finally crumbled, Winning only 3 games in an entire season, it felt like the death of a part of German culture. Then there is Leicester City, the authors of the greatest fairy tale ever told. They showed us that a small club could become a giant, but they also showed us how quickly that magic can be squandered. Just 7 years after the most impossible Premier League title in history, the book was slammed shut, and they were cast back into the Championship. It was a brutal reminder that in the modern game, if you stop innovating, you start dying. Even the most legendary names are not immune to the passage of time and the rot of poor decisions. Santos, the home of Pelé, the club that once stopped a war, found itself relegated for the first time in over a century, just 1 year after the King ES passing. It was a poetic, tragic irony that sent shockwaves through Brazil. When the foundation of a club is built on a single era or a single name, and you fail to build a bridge to the future, the collapse is inevitable. Santos' fall was a signal to every historic club that the past is a memory, not a safety net. Which brings our radar to the most chilling signal of all, the current state of Tottenham Hotspur. On paper, they are a juggernaut, a global brand, one of the top 10 wealthiest clubs in existence and the reigning Europa League champions. Yet as we speak, they are dancing on a razor's edge. They are the ultimate case study of what happens when a billion-dollar stadium and a massive revenue stream meet a complete lack of sporting direction. A single point is all that separates them from the relegation zone. If they fall, it won't just be a news story. It will be a tectonic shift that shatters the Big Six myth forever. It would be the most expensive disaster in the history of the sport, proving that you can buy the best grass in the world, but you can't buy a heartbeat. The lesson across every decade, every country, and every league is the same. The game of football is a hungry beast that does not care about your heritage. It doesn't care about your stadium capacity, and it certainly doesn't care about the name on the front of the shirt. It only cares about the work done today. These giants fell because they thought they were the exceptions to the rule. They thought the rules of gravity didn't apply to them. They were wrong. Every single one of them. Now, I want to trigger a massive debate in the comments below because your insight is what powers the Sportx Radar. If you had the power to reach into the past and save one of these fallen giants from their collapse, which one would it be and why? Was it the tragedy of Leeds, the scandal of Juventus, or the heartbreak of Bursaspor that hit you hardest? And more importantly, look at the table right now. Which untouchable powerhouse do you see rotting from the inside? Who is the next giant about to vanish from the top flight? Drop your theories, defend your team, or warn your rivals. Let's see whose radar is the sharpest.